Good morning and welcome to our short but impactful masterclass on power and power dynamics in relationships. My name is Ailsa Kepi and I'm a relationship and intimacy coach, and you can find out more about me on my website ailsakepi.com. So let's jump right in. I'm going to share a couple of slides with you just to kind of keep us on track today. So what is power and why is it important in our relationships? Well, power really is the capacity to have an impact. We have the power to, move our pencil from one side of the desk to the other. We have the power to choose to get out of bed or not every morning. So power is just, it's not inherently kind of good or bad. It's just this initial ability to have an impact. So we're going to specifically look at power in relationships because oftentimes, especially with the demographic, the people that I work with that have had emotionally abusive relationships, they come to me and they say, I feel powerless. I don't feel like I have the ability to impact this relationship. I don't have any power to do what I want in this relationship. So we're going to take a look at that today. So, what I said is power is not good or bad. It's simply power. And it's, this ability to have an influence or a control in a situation. We might all be feeling somewhat disempowered right now in the world because we feel sometimes like we're just this one very small person in this huge world and things are happening without or beyond our control. We don't have any say in what happens. We can't, if the climate change trend doesn't turn around, we can't do anything. Our one person in billions of people has no impact. But what we actually want to look at is, well, do we have impact? Can we have impact? Can we have some power? Because I think it's actually harmful to ourselves and to others to not own that we have some power. We may not have all the power. We may not have power all the time, but we do have some power, and other people have some power, and the climate has some power, the world has power, the weather has power. And we want to place ourselves within that milieu, within that sort of stage, because if we don't, we're actually causing harm to ourselves and others in a way that is unhelpful. So in any relationship, there's this dynamic interaction of power. Sometimes we have power, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have power and we use it to manipulate. Sometimes we have power and we walk away from a situation. Sometimes we have power to stay silent and to endure something that takes a lot of energy. So what we want to realize is that a bigger power differential means there's a greater risk of harm. And I think we see this, with someone in a powerful position, let's say a government position or a monarch of a country. And, when you juxtapose them to a commoner, or, let's say you're married to a prominent Hollywood star and you are just the average person, there's a power dynamic there, and there's maybe a greater power differential, which means that we need to acknowledge that it's there. It's not so much that that's a bad thing and that, okay, well, I can never be in relationship with a powerful person because I'm not powerful in that way. Because we can also have different types of power, and the person in a power up position, we could say, or a powerful position, has a responsibility to other people in relation to their power. And this is where, yes, we have issues in our culture around not wanting to own what power we have in any relationship. So we're going to take a look at that as well. So like I said, there's more than one type of power. There's, your own personal power. You have the power to, like I said, get out of bed. You have the power to, walk down the road. You have the power to to think what you want to think in your own mind. You have the power to turn on the TV or not. You have the power to, choose what you want for breakfast. I mean, some of these powers are also circumstantial powers, and you might say, well, I don't have a choice because the only thing I have in my pantry is cornflakes, so I have to have cornflakes for breakfast. So again, though, we want to own that, yes, we have some power, even however small it is, however bad the choice sounds, we still have a power. You have the choice to have 2 cornflakes or 1 cornflake or a whole cup full of cornflakes. You have a choice to have it with water or milk or, something else. You have to kind of look at that as a choice instead of looking at it as I don't have as much choice and power as maybe somebody who has 10 things to choose from for breakfast and a personal chef. That's different. But we still have personal power over what we choose to do, in a lot of sense. Even I'm going to quote this, and I don't have the backup of this person, but somebody who was a Holocaust survivor was at a concentration camp. I remember reading about and being inspired by this man that chose to imagine himself not only surviving the concentration camp, but also creating a way of helping other people. And that kind of kept him alive. He had the personal power and the imagination power to keep that alive during his very difficult time, when you could really argue that he didn't have much power at all, but he still had that power in his mind to imagine something. So there's personal power, there's role power, what kind of role we are playing. And this in relationship is always interesting for me when I start talking to clients and working with people is, what do you consider your role? If you're in a relationship and let's say it's a male-female couple, as a woman, do you consider your role to be related to your gender? And if so, how? And what do you see your partner's role related to their gender? And how do you picture that? And it's interesting sometimes how much we are, unconscious of some of those roles that are playing out in our history. We kind of taken that on. If we're a mother, we have a role there. There's a power there. You have power. You're in up power position compared to your children. You might consider yourself in a down power position compared to your spouse. Again, then that's an interesting kind of power dynamic, right? You have power with these people and not with these other people. Do you want to switch that role power? So do you imagine that you as a woman want to go out and work and maybe your partner wants to stay home with the kids and then switch it up? Does the person at home with the kids have more power? Is that what you consider? They have the power to choose what you're having for dinner or what time you get up or how the household runs or what the bills are. There's some things there too. Sometimes, we kind of unconsciously fall into those roles without realizing it. It's also kind of things like when you go to the doctor, we often give away a power to the doctor. It's like, well, they're the doctor, they should know best. So there's some of that. Similarly to a therapist, we might say, well, the therapist is the expert, they know better. Some people in their intimate relationships kind of use these roles as well. Like, I have a university degree, I'm therefore know more than you. So that's kind of power there. Institutional power comes into it too, in the sense of, religion. Perhaps there's a power, I'm part of this institution, this church perhaps, or mosque, or this religion that gives me this power. And I do talk about this in my Facebook group, because I found in my own experience of abusive relationships, The religion and the personal power came into the experience that I went through. So we're going to look a little bit at types of power here. And this is from the work of Dr. Offer if you're looking up more about him. But just to kind of say that an imbalance of knowledge can be power. So if one person, so this comes up in emotionally abusive relationships a lot. Let's look at that. The imbalance of knowledge. So if one person, often you meet somebody, and let's just say they're really a manipulative person, and they get you to talk about yourself more than they talk about themselves on the first date, let's say. So now they know something about you. And a lot of us that are empathic share a lot about ourselves right away. And this is something that, it offers the other person a certain power, because now they know something about us. And we might go home from that first date kind of thinking like, well, actually, I don't even know where that person lives. I don't know where they went to school. I don't know how many siblings they have. I don't know really anything about them, because they asked me questions and I shared all of my stuff, but they haven't shared theirs. So there's an imbalance of knowledge power, which, people that are manipulative often use. Another one that comes up is kind of coercive power. If one person forces another person against their will to do or say something, you could say it's a power play. Let's go and do this thing because it's better for us, or we can if you want me to come to your mom's for Easter dinner, then you're going to do this thing for me. There may be a coercive power, a manipulation there, where you're wanting certain things, or you're hoping to get something, but you have to kind of give in, or that's how they play it, right? So this kind of coercion comes into it, like, if you don't come along to my family dinner, if you don't dress this way, I'm just gonna disown you at the party. So, you're kind of coerced into presenting yourself in a certain way. So there's lots of examples of this, but this is a certain type of power as well. The power to reward or withhold, this is a power as well. And if one person, really anyone could have this power if they decide to use it. And especially if they know that the person that they're in relationship with, if it matters to them, right, about getting some type of reward or withholding needed love or affection. So often manipulative or narcissistic people use this type of power to say, I'm not gonna talk to you later unless you do this thing that I want. I'm not gonna take you out for dinner unless you go to the restaurant I want, that kind of thing. And you could say that this power needs to be wielded with responsibility if it's not to be abused, because it could be like if you're an employer and you have the power to hire and fire your employees, you have a power there. You could withhold their pay. You hold that position with responsibility. And so we have lots of examples of when someone could have power over us. And so to feel that power dynamic and to hold that with conscious awareness is important in order not to be abusive or be abused. Referent power is, if one person is admired or revered by another person, there's power dynamic here. This, if you thought about a therapist or someone that you really admired, you've transferred a lot of your, feelings onto them. They are, if you could only be in relationship with your therapist, you would have a wonderful relationship because they understand you, they feel for you, all of that. And there's a power dynamic there because, that's perhaps not always the case in a real relationship, right? We don't want to be always admiring the other person. We want to have kind of go back and forth. You could definitely admire something about your partner and always admire that. Like I have a current partner that has an extraordinary ability to self-reflect and to realize where he has made, mistakes or whatever. And I admire that about him. But I need to be careful that I also look at what I bring to that relationship, so that I'm not just, well, he's really good at this and this and this, and I'm not, right? So there's where we have to kind of look at ourselves as well, and we have a choice there of how we deal with referent power. Manipulative power, we've kind of been talking about that as well. We can control others in a devious way. If people are good at manipulation, they can be powerful in a certain sense. And you feel kind of like you've been through the ringer after you've maybe spent time with a manipulative person, because you're like, well, I went and we were having coffee and all of a sudden I was paying the bill. How did they do that? They manipulated me. Oh, I paid the bill last time, you pay the bill this time. And then, the next time you go for coffee, well, you paid last time, that worked out really well. You should pay again. They have this manipulative way about them that kind of twists it around. And so this can be powerful in a certain sense. So there's all these types of power, and then there's differentials just with between people. These are some of the ones that might come up, but between a parent and a child. If you're a parent, you are older, you're bigger, you have control about looking after your child, providing them with shelter, food. So you have the power up position there. And I have to say that unfortunately not all parents own their power here, and they don't own it responsibly. And so, if they act like a grown-up child, let's say, they become intoxicated and their child now has to try to take control of the situation, but they're only a child, this can lead to harm within this relationship because you're not taking your power seriously and owning that. As a child, it's sometimes helpful to look back and notice that you were in a down power position because you were a child, and therefore, you don't have to feel guilty that you didn't do well enough or that you weren't lovable. Like, you just needed a place to live, you needed food, you needed love, you needed shelter, and so you stayed, perhaps with parents that weren't ideal for you. Therapist client is obviously, there's a differential there. There pretty much always is. Doesn't always go just in the direction of the therapist having the up power position. Sometimes the client has some of the power. The client is paying for a service, perhaps. They have a power there. They can choose to pay or not. They can choose to cancel or not. So there's different powers going on there too. However, that relationship is you need to acknowledge where the power lies and what are the different types of power and how they work, because you can get definitely into a problem as a therapist or as a client. You can end up causing harm or being harmed in that type of relationship because there is a differential there. We talked about doctor and patient, an elder and a younger person, a white person, a person of color, man versus woman, gender, perhaps, man, woman, LGBTQ, queer, like where does everyone fall on that power differential? Well, it's not always clear cut, but it is always useful to think about where you have power and where you give your power away, and where another person just sees that they are in the power up position and takes that. Do you let them take that? So what happens with this? Well, the person in a down power position often feels disempowered, and therefore they act with less power, and therefore the person in the up power position experiences or assumes more power, and that becomes a pattern in your relationship. And so without some awareness and without some working on where do you have power, where does your partner have power, how does that work together, this can just become a self-fulfilling pattern of being disempowered more and more and more until you feel that you really have no power at all in this relationship, which if that's a completely conscious choice, can be wonderful. You could have a full-time sub-dominant kind of relationship. However, if it requires both people to be aware and responsible with their position, right? And often we want to have more of an equality in our relationship, then we need to step up. If we're in the down power position, we need to let some of our power kind of go, or share some of our power if we're in the up power position. So what can we do about this? Well, these are some of the ways that I work with clients about how to own our power, how to work on empowering ourselves, reclaiming confidence in our power. And these are things, by the way, that, this isn't just a quick once and done thing. These are practices that you may want to have someone help you be accountable to. And that is exactly why you might hire someone like me as a coach or a therapist with you to work through some of these things. How to speak out, find your voice. That's definitely something to claiming your power. How you can articulate what you want is important. If you can name these power dynamics, if you learn about power and your role power and your personal power, this can help in having more empowerment. One big one that I work with as a somatic coach is learning how to feel. It's very difficult to just have power in your head, in your mind, because a lot of the power is around a physical feeling and about owning our emotions. And somebody can, we talk about it, play with my emotions, which isn't a cognizant thing. It isn't just a mind thing. It's now about how I feel. If someone knows how to control that, they can still control you. If there's a safety issue, somebody's bigger and stronger than you, then you have to learn how to deal with that, and to stay in your body, to stay present in present time and not dissociate, because that does mean that it's almost impossible to stay in an empowered place if you are splitting off into different aspects of yourself and not present to what you're feeling in the moment. So that's something that I work with a lot with clients. We want to discover what you want. We want to discover who you are. What are your values and who are you? Because it's hard to have power if you have always just been responsive to other people or reactive to other people, and you don't actually know what you want. So if someone said to you, what's your favorite food? Where do you want to go for dinner? And you don't know, then you've given up a power because you haven't thought about who you are. So this is something that I work with as well. And in that, you want to learn to say yes and no and trust yourself in that, which is another whole big learning. And we can rewire your nervous system and your old habitual patterns. We can rewire that by increasing your learning capacity, your learning zone, to be able to stay present. We can look at options and work with expanding your ability to deal with stress. So, sometimes that's working with your electromagnetic field. Sometimes that's working with your body somatically to stay present to sensations, to feelings. Sometimes that's understanding how the nervous system works. Sometimes that's creating a list of resources. So there's so many ways that we can work with this. And I really hope that you would take the opportunity to practice this in community, reach out to me. Like I said, go to ailsakeppie.com. That's AILSAKEPPIE.com. Have a look at that. There's another free webinar on there. You can find out more about my coaching practice, my other website, pleasureforhealth.com. You can come and stay. I have a retreat center where I offer, personalized retreats to really work on this for you. And so this is, something that we can definitely work with. So I hope that this has been helpful just to kind of set the stage for some of these power dynamics, and that we can maybe work on something together. You can absolutely reach out, book a free consult with me, take a look at take a look at my online courses. There's one called Radical Responsibility, the Power of Choice, which I highly recommend if you've appreciated this talking, and you want to start that work about how did I end up here? How did I end up with these patterns of down power, or these patterns of giving away my power? How did that happen? So I will post a link in the comments to that course and to my website, and I sincerely hope this has been enough to intrigue you to get involved a little bit more in my world, and maybe reach out to me and do some work with me. So that is everything I am going to say about power for right now. I hope you have a wonderful, empowered morning. One small thing I'll leave you with is, let's say you have the power to choose how much, you have a cup of tea or coffee or some kind of drink in the morning. I won't say what kind of drink. You have the power to choose whether you have your cup half full or half empty, and how you drink that, how quickly you drink that. So, when you pick up your cup of coffee or tea or other beverage today, think about, I had the power to choose this. I had the power to choose how much I filled my cup. If I added honey or cream or almond milk, and I have a choice on how quickly I'm going to drink this, and have some gratitude for that. That's my small practice. A very small piece, but we don't build, we don't build Rome in a day. We don't build our power and our confidence in a day, but we have to start with very small steps. And one small step is owning that you have the power to choose. And so I leave you with that. And it's been such a pleasure talking to you today.